So the most mysterious movie of 2024 is finally here, and I can tell you guys for one thing, it was worth the wait. Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of D54. I'm Amit. Thank you so much for picking to choose this video to watch my review of Malaikottai Vaaliban. So it's just come out to cinema. It came out last night and I was able to see it. I think not the first show, but the second show. And you know, a lot of hype, a lot of expectations coming into this movie because there's been a lot of talk, a lot of promotions, more than I've really seen from most Malayalam movies, to be honest, and more from a Lijo movie. Lijo movies, I feel like, don't do that much promotions, you know, they sort of just let them speak for themselves. But obviously having Mohanlal's name attached to the movie helps a lot, and there's been a lot more promotion. So, you know, there was a lot of hype built up for this movie, and with that, there was a lot of intrigue because I was really delightfully surprised by the approach that the team for Malaikottai Vaaliban took to sort of, I guess, promote this movie. Because like we had glimpses, we had teasers, we had songs, we had the official trailer, we had posters come out. They did everything in their power to promote this movie, and to make it even better, the distribution was really good because it's come out to the cinema close to my house. I think it came out to maybe like 5 or 6 cinemas around Victoria. So it was really accessible for anyone that's here in Melbourne. And I saw a lot of other posters sort of saying that it was available in lots of parts of Europe and things like that. So wherever you are, if you didn't have a chance to watch this in cinema, then, you know, I'm really sorry for you because this is a movie just made for the cinema. And I'll get onto that a little bit more with sort of the visuals, which were just unbelievable. But in terms of the promotions, I do want to talk about it a little bit. The one thing that Lijo really did in this whole lead up to this movie was he really enticed us and he really kept us guessing as to what this movie is about. You can check out all of our sort of reactions that we did for the teasers and the trailer, and myself and mostly Kathy, we were just watching it from Cinemondo and we were just like, what is this movie about? You know, what is this movie about actually? They had a glimpse where he looked like a giant. Then that was sold he wasn't a giant. Then we had a whole lot of mystery. There was talks about illusion, magic. There were talks about, you know, there is no time and space from some of the stuff Mohanlal has said. So it's really like we didn't really have any idea what this movie was about. And I actually really appreciated that because I could go into a cinema and watch a movie almost like I'm going in blind. Like with the culture of, I guess, you know, promotions these days, it's like people seem like they're more excited about trailers and teasers than they are about the actual movie. And I think that does a disservice to the industry because we should be excited to go and see the movie. And that's what I think the promotions did really well for Malaikottai Vaaliban, because the promotions really helped to tease what this movie feels like, what this movie looks like. It gave us a look at what Mohanlal looked like. It made us ask some questions as to what this movie is about. And all that curiosity really led me to a place where I came in really with really no expectations as to what this movie is going to be about. And I really just appreciated that. It just enhanced the viewing experience so much more coming in blind. I didn't think I would have to say that in, you know, going to see a movie in cinema, but that was such a cool experience to have that. As someone who covers movies on my channel, it's cool that I could go in to see a movie and have just nothing shown to me. So I really appreciated the approach here and I loved it. Now, about the movies, guys, I'm going to take this as non-spoiler free as possible. So, you know, I'm going to not give too many details about the story. I'm just going to talk about it in terms of its structure and what I thought. I will be doing a spoiler review as well, probably after this one. But I mean, it's a Lijo movie. So what better place would there be to start than the visuals? This movie, guys, if you can see this in cinema, please do. Because I feel like this is kind of groundbreaking cinema. Because Lijo host Pellissery obviously has one of the best technicians, one of the best visionaries in terms of how he brings a movie to life. No one I can think of that does it better than he does. I mean, it's unbelievable the attention of detail he puts into the number of techniques he has to show you, you know, movies from different perspectives. It's not just visually mind-blowing. Like it all has a reason and all has a different impact. So in this movie, it's like he has a bigger budget. He does some stuff that I don't think I've seen before. There's some pretty creative camera techniques he did in this one, but you also had a lot of the stuff that he did just on a much higher budget, it feels like. So it was pretty breathtaking. Like, you can go to this movie and just watch it for its visuals and be completely blown away, because it was just beyond anything that I've seen before. And I want to thank the people who brought this movie to cinema here, because it not only landed in a cinema, like most of the movies that I see in cinema here, for example, Near It, which was the other Mohanlal movie, which I saw in cinema, it goes to like a smaller screen. So it's not really the big, massive widescreen that we get. But this movie was gone. This movie went to the big screen. So you got to see it in all its glory. And it really made such a difference, because I think Lijo made this movie. He designed it for the cinema. This was not designed for, watching at home or anything like that. I could tell with a lot of his other movies, they feel like they were definitely more cinematic experiences, but you can get away with sort of watching them at home. In this movie, just due to the landscape and the terrain that we're in, he really takes advantage of that. And he gives you so much depth in his sort of filmmaking. It's just entrancing to watch his movie, to be honest. Like, you can just watch this movie on mute and be blown away. Fantastic. Some really breathtaking shots in this. There's this one scene that just completely blew me away, which is kind of like a bit of a dream sequence. Which it was a really short shot, but it felt completely different to what he's done before. Just visually striking. And there's other ones he does. There's a similar shot which he did in Ima Yao. I'm not sure if that's a little Easter egg for Lijo fans out there, but there's a shot he does which is very similar to that, which is just absolutely stunning once again. So visually, this movie is like a 10 out of 10. One of the most amazing visual spectacles I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's mind-blowing, guys. Like, if you can see it in cinema, please do. Now, regarding the story, this story, again, we came in pretty blind. So I got a feeling that a lot of people have mixed reviews about this movie, and part of that is probably to do with sort of the story and sort of what people expected to come in. Now, if you're like me and you're a huge Lijo fan, then I feel like this will be pretty comfortable for you. Look, on our channel, if you didn't know, if you're new to our channel, we did a complete month where we did a deep dive on Lijo movies. We did 5 of his most acclaimed movies, and we did deep dives on them. So our channel doesn't do, small reviews. We spent like an hour on each of these movies, breaking them down basically as much as we can. So Amen, Jalikatte, Churali, Angamali Diaries, and Ima Yao. We covered them all extensively, and so we really got to understand what sort of drives Lijo. We've also obviously covered Nampakul Neretu Mayakam, which was also absolutely amazing. But in terms of like Lijo, his storytelling in this movie, I feel like it's got a lot of similarity to what he's done in his other movies. The first half of the movie, and I can tell when I was in the cinema with people were getting restless, because it is that sort of sense, like we had a bit like in Angamali Diaries, I would say, probably the closest, and maybe even Truly, where you really don't know where you're going with this movie. You're kind of like just left to your own devices. There's not really a strong storyline. We don't really know what the overall message is of this movie. We don't really know what's actually going on a lot of the time. Like, why be going on this journey with this wrestler? He is a wrestler. He's kind of like a wrestler from, I guess, pre-colonization times, I would put it as. It doesn't really explicitly say when this movie takes place, but it's definitely around that early colonization period in probably a really rural part of India, I guess Kerala, if you want to put it. But yeah, so the first hour, I could tell that a lot of people in the cinema were getting a little bit restless at this, because there was just no sort of, it left us really directionless as to where we're going with this movie. And for me, what I came out of it, and I guess this is something that I got mainly, after letting this movie digest some time, it really felt like a bit after the interval, it feels like it's kind of like the movie's complete in one way. And then after that, we take on another movie altogether, it feels like. Not that the characters change and not like there's not any continuation to what happened before, but the story kind of takes a different pivot that you don't really expect at that time. Because I would say after the interval, there's an amazing, just, oh my God, just mind-blowing, spectacular, action sequence, which you would have seen in the trailer with the, I guess the colonizers, if you put it like that. In that, I thought it was British, but it was actually closer to, I think, either Spanish or Portuguese. I'm not too familiar with the history of Kerala, but I would think it's Portuguese, because I know that the Portuguese were in Goa, so maybe it's taking that storyline. But again, I don't know if the events of the story even fit into our world. And I'll get onto that a little bit more a little later. But in terms of, there's an absolutely epic, mind-blowing battle sequence, which is shot like insanely. It is so over the top at times, but it is so well done, and you're mesmerized by what Lijo is doing with the camera here. It is spectacular, man. Like, oh my God. Like, it was pretty mind-blowing to watch this just chaos happen around him. Obviously, you have the score. The music plays a big part into this, and that adds to, Lijo's filmmaking as well. But yeah, in terms of that scene right there was beautiful. But in terms of the story, after the interval, which that scene happens, it feels like there's almost like that. It feels like that's the climax of the movie. But, there's much more to go as we keep sort of going along the journey with Malaikottai Vaaliban and Mohanlal. But speaking of Mohanlal, guys, I can't talk too much more without speaking about his performance and sort of how amazing it was, because he was just spectacular in this movie. There is a lot of action in this movie, and there's different kinds of action. There's the style, which is, as I mentioned, he is kind of a wrestler. He's kind of a person who's going around the land and being like a protector of the land. So he goes around and he challenges, local heroes, if you want to put it like that. And then he would battle them and see if he comes out on top to then be the ruler of the land of their area. So that's sort of what the story is kind of about. But Mohanlal's performance, as I said, there's a lot of action. And from what I had read, I don't think there was much in terms of stunt doubles. So if Mohanlal is doing all of this, it is pretty fantastic and pretty incredible, because there's some legit action sequences in this. I'm not talking about just like, swinging your arms around a little bit and not moving, which a lot of older sort of actors do. They, are limited in how much they can move. So they just stand and sort of, just use weapons or use their arms. But Mohanlal is running around and doing everything. A lot of techniques are there. So it's fantastic. And the style of like the fighting is so interesting because it's varied in different ways. Obviously, we have the one in the trailer, which is kind of more like a battle with guns and swords. And that's not a spoiler. It's in the trailer. But there's other ones that are more sort of hand-to-hand combat. And it is sort of the wrestling style. Now, if you guys are wondering whether I'm a fan of this style, we'll just take a look in my video and you might be able to see something which might tell you if I'm a wrestling fan or not. But essentially, the style that I really liked was a wrestling, sort of brawling kind of style. It's kind of style. I didn't really know what the rules were behind the fights that they had, but it seemed like it was more kind of like a gladiator fight to you're defeated, not necessarily fight to the death, which is in sort of one scene. But in terms of like the other ones, it's really just fight. The fighting was fantastic, and I think the best one especially was in the Portuguese, or whoever you want to call them. Because while there are parts of this movie that are in, I think it's Portuguese. I can't understand Portuguese, but just because of my wrestling sort of knowledge, I could definitely understand. They said the word luchador, and even the way that they sort of fought, it was much more on the sort of Nacho Libre style of wrestling, which is much more aerial, which is much more flashy compared to what Mohanlal's style is, which is more sort of gritty. I put it as that. So a lot of action scenes, and Mohanlal's performance in the first half is fantastic, but when it gets to the second half, it elevates even more. I'm talking about after that interval stage, because there's something that happens that really brings out the best of Mohanlal. And I think Mohanlal is a person made for this role, I feel like. I don't know what other people are saying, but I feel like Mohanlal, and only Mohanlal, could have played this character off. Now, I say that because transitioning a little bit to sort of the style of the movie and the other things I really liked is, if you watch any of my reviews and me talking about Lijo, one thing I always have mentioned about Lijo is there's something very theatrical about his movies. I'd feel like he is somebody that must have grown up around theatre, classical plays, and things like that. He must have been a fan of Shakespeare and the like, because this movie, more than his other movies, feels like a theater. It feels like a drama. It's something that you would watch like live. It doesn't really feel like a movie at times. And that's because of sometimes, there are literal like stage shows in this movie that's there. There's a lot of music and a lot of amazing music, which is so powerful. I will just speak quickly about the music a little bit because I think it deserves a lot of recognition. Like, Lijo is a master of sound design. Whoever he works with is just, it's phenomenal. And it's nothing less here as well. It's absolutely fantastic. Like, he has this like theme song, which gives this movie a bit of character with sort of the whistle, the Western kind of whistle that you hear in the sort of the trailers and the teasers and really everything. You've sort of heard that little whistle play out. That's continuously there throughout the movie whenever there's sort of a big moment. But there's this song that comes on. The song's name is Punara Katil Puvanatil. When that song hits, it's just amazing. Like, I mean, it's beautiful. It's really powerful. And it's even like, I mean, listening to the song itself is beautiful. The lyrics are obviously just, oh my God, beautiful. It's like a love song, a nice little ballad between these two youngsters falling in love. The thing that makes this song so special, though, is how important it is for the context of the movie. He uses music so well in this movie. It's just like it elevates the emotion and elevates, I guess, the storytelling so much just through that song. And I feel it's like one of the better examples of how music can be used to just elevate a story and do it so well. It's beautiful. There's so much stillness in the song, and it's almost like this deep. You sort of feel the characters falling deeply in love just through that song. It's fantastic. In terms of like the writing and the delivery, it's a lot of like people are talking like they're not talking like, you know, how you and I would talk, like converse. It's a lot of sort of, you know, I guess playing up to the crowd, if you want to put it like that. It's a lot of spectacle in the talking. So, you know, there's a lot of that drama elements to this movie, much more than his other ones. In terms of my personal opinion, I absolutely loved it. It was so good to see him go all in on this style, because I've seen him tease it in other movies. So I've been waiting for him to do this. And again, that's why I sort of say Mohanlal is the only person that could have sort of played this off, because he was able to do that delivery so well. He can mix it up with a jovial side. He can have some comedy. There's no flat comedy scenes in this movie, but his sort of personality and charisma, the sort of larger than life kind of personality that he has, that he can show at times, really came in advantage in this style of filmmaking. Fantastic performance, and there's some seriously strong emotional points in this movie that really just make you feel for what's happened. And I'll say that to sort of lead on a little bit more towards sort of, I guess, that second half, which I'm trying to talk about without spoiling too much. But when I mentioned before that the first half of the movie is a little slow, some people might think it's a little slow. What it's actually doing, it's actually building up a lot of other characters in the first half, much more than what you would think. But this is not uncommon for Lijo. Lijo doesn't just put characters in the movie to just have sideshows. He actually invests his time into each and every single character and gives them stories, and they all pay off. That's the one thing about Lijo's movies that I absolutely love. Everything sort of ties together and it sort of completes. And I wouldn't say this movie completed, and I can't speak too much more about that without sort of spoiling it. I can safely say that in the first half, whatever happens, despite it being a little bit drawn out, and you might feel that the time is going slow during those periods, but it all counts towards the end because it really hits you. There's stuff that happens in this second half that really hits you, I feel. And it's just, it was all worth it. So guys, I think I've talked about it at pretty good length. I mean, this is a movie that I feel like I could keep talking about because it's just absolutely amazing. And there's so much to break down in this movie. And that is without even talking about any of the real storyline, because I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, which I am going to do a spoiler review probably later on and talk about that a little bit more, because I just feel like there's some points in the story I really want to get into. But in terms of this movie, guys, I absolutely had a blast with it. There's so much to like about this movie in terms of its, again, I mentioned the cinematography. It's mind-blowing. It is something else. It's honestly, to me, it's groundbreaking. And I don't think people should dismiss that. Like, you know, just because we expect Lijo to have unbelievable cinematography, that doesn't mean that we should dismiss the fact that he's put together something pretty remarkable in this. Again, in terms of the storyline, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was riveting, it was entertaining, and I just couldn't speak more highly of it. Mohanlal was obviously fantastic in this movie, as was all the rest of the cast. Like, the other thing I should probably mention is there's a lot of romance in this movie. Like, it really sort of builds relationships, and it does talk about, I guess it talks about, you know, having to leave your love behind a lot of the times because of, I guess, the duties that Mohanlal and his crew, he has a small crew around him, they have to sort of leave with him and sort of help him around. It's pretty amazing, guys. Now, the one thing that I'm a little bit confused by, now, obviously, Lijo movies always have a lot of depth to them. They always tell us stories beyond. You know, there's sort of different ways you can view the movie, and he has a lot of subtext in his movies. So far, I've not been able to tell what exactly this movie is trying to tell us beyond just what we literally saw. but there is a part of this movie that I think leaves you in suspense. And I wouldn't say it's like an open-ended conclusion. I can't really speak about it more without going into spoilers, guys. But in terms of what this movie is trying to tell us thematically, so far, I would say the themes that it really talks about was a lot to do with destiny, a lot to do with the warrior's code. I guess sacrifice is also a big theme in this, as well as love and romance. He does sort of tease these sort of things, and I feel like there's more to the story that we're going to get told. But as for now, like, I just think, like, I don't really know what Malaikottai Vaaliban is really about beyond just the wrestler's sort of journey. But that's because where the movie leaves us. I can't really say anything more without sort of, I guess, ruining it, because there was a sort of surprise twist at the end, but it's not the kind of twist that you would expect. But hey, guys, that was my review. I absolutely love this movie. For me, it did everything that I wanted it to do. And I don't really know what the talk is about this movie, but I personally absolutely loved it. As I said, you can go in for this movie and just watch the visuals alone and be mesmerized. But on top of that, you have a lot of other really, really good things going for this movie. And it's just feels like if you can watch this in the cinema, please do, because it's just an experience. So guys, thanks a lot for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.